Well, it is lovely to see everyone, and welcome to the session today, which is all around mastering menopause with your well-being and your health. I'm so excited to be joined with Bex here today as we talk through this in terms of from what are the hormones that are happening in your head, and then also how can we be looking to manage that with nutrition as well. And I know that when we spoke, I was just like, oh, take that away as a tip. And so I'm looking forward to, I've got my pad and my pen ready so that I'm ready to take more notes so that I can be managing these even more. So it is great. It is great to have you. And like I said, this is recorded. So we'll also be sending the recording out afterwards as well. So take the notes as you wish, but you can also make sure that you can be catching up on it, or like going out for a walk and having it also on your headphones maybe later on as well. Welcome as people kind of pop in. So good to have you here this lunchtime, if it's lunchtime for you in whichever time zone you're in. So a little bit of introduction. I'm Jenny Muhlwa. I've worked in learning and development for over 15 years, and my menopause story, or my perimenopause story, started a few years ago. I was always into traveling, love traveling. I've lived in different countries. I've lived in Brazil, and I've lived in Turkey, and I've lived in France. I love traveling. Currently, I now live in Portugal. And one day I needed to get a Ryanair flight, which might induce some anxiety, but it doesn't normally. It's totally fine. And I was sitting there in my bed, and I needed to get this flight because I needed to go to London to do some work. Just a normal Tuesday, nothing wrong with this. But for some reason, I couldn't get out of even the bedroom. And I said to my husband, I don't want to go, because suddenly I felt all these terrible things were going to happen to me, were going to happen to the family if I left and got on a plane and got on a tube in London, and it was going to be horrific. I'd never had this before, never had this. And my husband just went, okay. So he stood by the door, and he said to me, you don't have to go, but how about you just come to the hallway? Because nothing bad is happening in the hallway. So I said, all right, but I'll do that. But I'm not going to go any further. I'm not getting on that plane, and I'm not going to London. He's like, you don't have to, just come to the hallway. So I went to the hallway, and I was like, okay, well, this is it, but I'm not going in. He was like, how about we just go and have some toast and some coffee, we just have a bit of breakfast. I'm not going to go anywhere else, but I think the kitchen's going to be okay. All right, well, I'll go to the kitchen, but I'm not going to go any further. And of course, I then got in the car. I then went to the airport. I got on the plane. Everything was fine. But when I came back, I really thought I'd started to lose my mind. I never had an anxiety attack, kind of like this feeling that everything was just going to kind of fall down. I never had that before. And I was like, what is going on? And when I came back, my husband said, I've been looking a little bit, and I've seen there's this thing called perimenopause, and I've seen the NHS talk about it a little bit, and maybe you might want to take a look at some of this stuff. And that was my first introduction into the hormones that were happening in my womb. They had a reaction all around the brain and all around my body, and I had no idea that was something that could be happening. So that was my first introduction. So I started to read more about it. I then Bex and I met on a coaching course. And as part of this coaching course, there was a neuroscience module. And I got to hear all about how cortisol can affect your ability to meet your goals. And I was like, well, if this hormone of cortisol has this great effect, what about these hormones that I know that I've been experiencing all my life through my hormone cycle, but also now as I start to go through perimenopause? And Professor Tricia said to me, Jenny, there's been no research. And I got angry. So I started to work on finding more research into that. And some of that is what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So we'll look around what is happening in and how to manage some of that. So that's who I am. I'm like, yeah, worked in learning and development, got really interested in perimenopause when it suddenly hit me like a bloody truck and I didn't know what was going on. Went to university, found out that there's this thing called hormones that affect every single cell of your body, but there's been no research into the hormones that happen in women. I got angry about it. I researched about it, and now I want to tell more women about it. And we were talking about, I'm doing a retreat that I'll talk about later, because I want to help women to just like get away from it and go to a place that is not being westernized and touched by all the stuff of the expectations that we have that are not helping. So I've got my pen ready. Are we ready to learn some stuff? Yeah, let's learn some stuff. So here is what I've learned along the way. So first of all, we're going to talk about kind of a normal cycle. So what is, so first of all, before we start even talking about, well, what is perimenopause, what is menopause, what's postmenopause, and then all the amazing things that Bex is going to like tell us in terms of how can we sort of be managing some of this, how can we be optimizing our health through this time. But first of all, I don't know about you, but I was only taught about the 5 days of a cycle. I was told all about what happens when I'm on a period, and maybe a couple of days before that I might be grouchy. And that was pretty much what I was told as a 12-year-old as I was starting at school. I've then since learned that actually there's hormones that are happening every single day, and I now know that these hormones flood every single cell in my body. So what's happening during this time? So I like to think, you know, that I've just told you I like flying. Thank God I've managed to get on some more planes again since and managed my symptoms a little bit with it. So we've got, first of all, I'm going to talk about 2 hormones. There are other ones, but we're just going to talk about 2 today because we've just got like an hour and a half and a lot to get through, a lot of great stuff to get through. So the 2 hormones that we're going to talk about are estrogen and progesterone. So what happens in the first 5 days, so this is when your period is, and again, I'm just talking about and I'm going to put quotation typical cycle. So we're just going to talk about 28-day typical cycle before we talk about what happens after that. So we've got 5 days where hormones are quite low. So we're just going to talk about estrogen to start off with. So I like to think of this as if we're the pilots on the plane, routing out the map of where we're going to go. Where's the next destination for this 28 days going to be? Like, what's this next like cycle going to be like? We're getting the food on board. We're getting the bags on board. You know, but we're grounded. We're resting. We're not going anywhere. We're just getting it all on and we're mapping it out. So this is because so it's a bit like our hormones are a bit grounded. They're kind of like low. They're grounded and they're just eating and getting ready. We then start to go on the runway and estrogen starts to lift off. So you can see here, estrogen is like coming off. So as we build speed, if you can imagine, I mean, I hope you like flying like I do, but I get super excited when you get onto that runway. And my kids even go, we're blasting off. That's what they call it. You know, that kind of like, whoa, and it starts to like, you know, you build up speed and off you go. So that's like estrogen coming up. Now, estrogen is responsible for lots of stuff in the brain. It's responsible for helping us to feel really confident about ourselves. We've got estrogen receptors at the front of the brain. So I've got my little like brain here. So we've got estrogen receptors all over the brain. But at the front part of the brain, this is where we've got cognitive functioning. So estrogen receptors here make it really easy to make decisions. You know, like I've got complicated, what house should I buy? Oh, I should buy that one. Like suddenly, actually, I'm just confident in the decisions that I've got to make. There's also estrogen receptors over here. So this is the hippocampus, and this is responsible for short-term memory as well. So I know where my keys are. I can look at a timetable and I can go, oh, look, you know, I'm on a train platform and I can be calling someone and I can go, oh, hang on, yeah, I can see, oh, God, my train's cancelled. But look, if I go there and there and there, I'll still be able to get it. Right, I've got to get to platform 9, go. And because your hippocampus, there's more reactivity happening over there. So this is the hormone that's making us feel really good about ourselves. We've got short-term memory is activated, problem solving is activated, decision making is activated, spatial awareness is activated. So I can parallel park without an issue. And I know I can pretty much guess that I could probably run to that platform in 10 minutes because I've got all of that going on in my brain. Then it sort of peaks around ovulation. So at ovulation, you're actually sending out pheromones. We're actually like literally sweating out pheromones. So what are pheromones? Well, these are kind of for attracting a mate, if we're thinking about it from animalistic or biological terms. But if we think about this, that means that we are at our most magnetic selves at ovulation. So, you know, there's times that you go, how does she do it? You're just kind of like this, how does she, like, you kind of have that bit sometimes with like women. And I'm like, she's probably having an ovulation party. It's probably what's going on right now. It's just like the pheromones are kind of going out. So that's that point when sort of everything just kind of flows. So when we're thinking about these things, what's happening in terms of what's happening in the brain, and we want to think about peak performance, this is a great time for doing all the things that are great for this. So, for example, a great time to be networking, a great time to get, if you've got an idea for a product, for example, getting that out to other people, a great time to, if you're going to be asked to go on a podcast, to go do the podcast, present to a board, present a webinar. Like, this is like a great time for that because you're feeling more confident, you've got short-term memory going, you can hold a conversation, you can say, someone goes, oh, I can't remember where I was. You probably are more likely to jump in because you've got all that short-term memory is being activated. So if we think of ourselves as a cycle of creation, this is great for creating new stuff, not just like new humans, but new communities, new products, new leadership styles, etc., etc. Then at ovulation, estrogen starts to go down. It has a little bump of a lift, and then it starts to kind of tail off, and then we're back into coming into land. So this is like, we're now, you know, we've served the drinks, we've served the food, and then the pilot says, right, strap in because we're going to go for landing, but there's going to be a little bit of turbulence along the way. So you're kind of like, it can be a little bit of a bumpy ride. So as this starts to go down, of course, what's happening in the brain is now these estrogen receptors, so it comes up from, you know, the estrogen is coming up from the ovaries, comes up through the spinal cord, comes into the brain. Now there's less of this going on in the brain. So what happens at that point? We start to feel less confident. We start to feel like we don't want as much, I call, outward energy, as this starts to then come down. So if you think of estrogen like I like to think of estrogen like, you know, one day I'm going to buy a glittery jacket. It's like a glittery jacket and it's got some girlfriends and it's like, let's go karaoke, let's like go, you know, it's like, ooh, and then it starts to go down. Now what happens during this stage, so we've got kind of ovulation, and then this stage is another hormone comes into play. So this other hormone of our friend is called progesterone. So progesterone is really rather low in that first phase, and then it lifts in the second phase. So progesterone is responsible for more inward creative energy. So what's happening in the brain is that, again, if we think about here, so what's coming up is there's a place here called the amygdala. And the amygdala is responsible for emotion and is responsible for long-term memory. So what happens here, for some, now each woman is going to respond differently to their hormones, but for some women, progesterone can feel really emotional, can feel really kind of, heightened of emotion, height of anxiety. And that was definitely what was happening for me during that kind of spell that I went through. But what's happening here, why is that? Because the amygdala, there's more reactivity in the brain. So we know this little part, it's only a tiny, look how small it is, tiny little part, but it's responsible for this long-term memory and emotions. So we feel things more intensely than we did in the first half of our cycle, because there's more reactivity in the brain happening during that time. We have longer-term memory is then activated. So we feel annoyed about, have you ever been in an argument and it's just like, where's this come from? And you're like, well, on August the 20th on 2019 at precisely 2:04, you also said, and you're like, how do you remember that? Well, I remember it because progesterone is high and I've got like long-term memory is activated right now. But so I like to think of this as like a big old dressing gown, you know? So we've had like our glittery jacket of estrogen, and now progesterone's in play, and we're going to get our like dressing gown and our slippers, and it's like, will you just chill out? Like, let's just like get a book and just like stop all this kind of like, you know, outward energy stuff. But so we tend to hide as women. This is when it's like, don't be emotional, don't be hormonal. Like it's normally like this side. So you're like, oh, I hate this side. I want to override progesterone with coffee and sugar and watching Netflix until 2 a.m. to make me feel like something, to get me back to feeling something that resembles this side. Because this is a society, we celebrate this energy, but this is the energy that we go, ooh, don't do that one. But let me tell you what's so powerful about this. What's so powerful about this energy, if we know that it is now long-term memory is activated when I have progesterone. Okay, so what might that mean? That might mean if I want to start to create a new workshop, a new product, something that I want to bring to the market, if I'm researching that, I can connect the dots much quicker, much more easily, because long-term memory is activated. If I need to think about a script for a presentation, that's a great time to do it, because long-term memory is activated and there's some inward energy going on. In fact, research has showed that when progesterone is high, there's more alpha wave activity happening. Now, alpha wave activity is the same for like when you're doing yoga and meditation and listening to. This is great for for flow. Why do we do all those things? To get clarity of thought. Now, if we allow ourselves to go with the flow of that energy, we can allow ourselves to get more clarity of thought. And here's the powerful thing, is that the amygdala, that's our emotions, is activated as well. So rather than getting frustrated with that, we could get curious about that. What is that emotion telling me? Why am I anxious? Why am I frustrated? Why am I angry? Why am I fearful? What is that emotion telling me? So that when I get into my next cycle, I can do something about it when I'm feeling confident. Because change doesn't happen because we saw some numbers or we saw something go. Change happens because of the way we feel about something. So if we're able to tap into the feeling, the emotion is telling me something. I now can identify what that need is. Ooh, can't see that. This is something then that's something new that I want to create, or I want to deal with, or I want to address. And that can be then that you decide, actually, I'm going to now do something with that when I've got estrogen is in this higher place. Super awesome. So we have these like power within us of these hormones. So what happens then? So this is super powerful, right? So we can see, okay, this is amazing for peak performance. This is amazing to help us to gain clarity. This is amazing when we're thinking about what is my next chapter? What is it that I want to do? Okay, I want to get some inward energy to form some clarity. Going to be doing some of that with this progesterone energy. I now want to get my new idea that I have out there and I want to share it with the world. I'm going to do that when I've got some estrogen energy. So it helps. So I've got like a heart, you know, I could talk for half a day on that stuff, but I can't because we've only got an hour and a half. So what happens then? So that's like a little overview of the power of the hormones in your head. Awesome. But what then happens is there are 3 stages. So this is like, so, you know, we've kind of got, I'm going to, you know, normal and inverted, because it's going to be different for different people. And it's going to be different depending on what's happening in your 28 days. But you've got this 28 days happening. And then perimenopause hits. And so estrogen goes on a bit of a ride in perimenopause, and it might kind of come down, it might spike up, it might have a few cycles, it might go, you know, it might kind of go on a funny kind of ride. And then menopause is the point in time in which you've not had a period for 12 months. So perimenopause can happen from anything for 2 to 10 years. And it is recognized by symptoms. Menopause is then the time in which you've not had a period for 12 months, and it is a date. That date, like, get yourself a cake. That is your menopause party. Like, did it. And then post-menopause is that day onwards. So what's happening with this estrogen is that's where you can get these different things in the brain. So they're coming up in the brain. So we know when estrogen isn't present, we're going to not have as much estrogen at the front. That's where brain fog can then happen, because there isn't as many estrogen receptors at the front. At the back here is the thalamus. There isn't as many estrogen receptors, like, not as much estrogen coming up. So that's where we get hot flushes. There's not as much estrogen happening in the amygdala to calm our emotions. So that's when we get, these different kind of like fire, like kind of feel that fire of anger. And there isn't as much happening. There isn't as much estrogen now happening in the hippocampus, because I haven't got as much short-term memory. So this is what's happening here. So why is it important to then start to tune in to your body? So if you have got a cycle, great, start to track those things. If at the moment you're on like, wow, I'm feeling some of those things, and that's like, I never track my cycle. Hilarious. Didn't track my cycle until I was 42. Well done, Jenny. That was a mistake. Don't be Jenny. Like, if you're younger than, like, definitely track your cycle. And now do, but track it in terms of also how am I feeling today? I now know I'll wake up and I call it like day 15, because day 15 to me is like my turnaround day. Regardless, I might be on day 25, I might be on day 2, but that's telling me progesterone is coming up. What do we need to do today that's a little bit more inward energy? Or I wake up and I'm like, today is going to be an amazing day. It's probably more estrogen that's present today. Okay, what are we going to do with that energy? So here's some of the things that's happening now. What do we do with that? How do we manage some of this? Because although this is the ride, this is something that the hormones are telling us something. We don't have to fight them. They're a gift. They're telling us to look after ourselves now, because this is only the second chapter. This is only like, this is only the curtains, like, closing for a little interlude while we go and just, like, get a little bit of, like, recalibration, and then the curtains are going to open and we're going to go into the second act. So let's go into the second act with ultimate health, longevity, listening to our bodies, not overriding it, to be able to have that. And so Bex is, like, going to come in and tell us this stuff, and I'm here with my pen and my paper, and I cannot wait. Bex.
Okay, that was so interesting. I'm sure it all resonated with all of us about how we feel at different points in our cycle, because it certainly did for me. Right, I'm just going to now start my little slideshow. Hopefully you can all see this. Here we go. Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, I know there are going to be lots of people watching the recording that won't. I am a mum of 4. Yes, there are only 3 children in this picture. So if anyone is good at photoshopping, let me know. There'll be another little head to add in. But I am also a health and wellness specialist. I'm an executive coach, so I'm a menopause and a maternity coach, and I'm a nutritionist and a personal trainer, and I have a background in psychology. And I specialize in working with women through the main transitions in their lives, one of which is menopause. And I'm really passionate about helping women to live their healthiest and happiest lives, no matter what stage of the journey of life that they're in. And that is what today is all about. It's about helping women to transition as smoothly as possible through the menopause. So it's going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour, because nutrition is incredibly nuanced, as is stress. But I'm aiming to cover quite a lot in the time that we've got together. So it's going to be quite top line. But we are going to talk, to begin with, about the power of nutrition. We're then going to go into essential nutrients for menopause. We're then going to look a little bit about stabilizing blood sugar. We're going to look at fasting, caffeine, sugar, and alcohol considerations, because some of those are different at this stage in our lives from what they were, a few years before. We're then going to look at good and bad stress, and we're going to look at stress management and some lifestyle changes. So I want to caveat today's session by saying there's going to be a lot of information. It might feel really overwhelming, and I do not want you to be overwhelmed, okay? Because when you're overwhelmed, you can get stuck, and then you're not going to take any action. And that is not what Jenny and I want to do. We want to facilitate and to help and to guide you through this stage. So yes, there's going to be a lot of information, but please don't be concerned about having to do everything. These are best practices. What I would love for you to do is maybe take 3 action steps from after today. Just 3 things, 3 little changes that you can make that are going to help to improve your health and well-being from today. And then maybe if lots of these things resonate with you, then maybe you can do another 3 additional changes in a few weeks' time. But I don't want you to have this huge list of to-dos, this massive shopping list, and then for you to just feel completely overwhelmed. Okay, that's not the goal. So please do bear all of that in mind as I'm going through today. So why is nutrition especially important in menopause? Now, nutrition is incredibly important, obviously, at all stages of our lives. We are what we eat, but it does become even more important in perimenopause, because sometimes the symptoms of perimenopause can actually be brought about by a deficiency in nutrients, which leave you feeling even worse. Estrogen gets low, as we know, and this actually has a protective effect over our body, but particularly on our brains and our bones. So when we're losing this estrogen and this protective effect, it's even more important that we eat in a certain way to protect our brains and our bodies, because the estrogen is no longer there to do that for us. Progesterone has a calming and relaxing effect. So when we lose this hormone, as Jenny was saying, we can get more anxious and more stressed, and it can impact our sleep. And we can eat foods and eat in different ways to help to support this progesterone. And then hormonal changes can lead to lots of long-term health complications. We all focus on the symptoms as we're going through them, but actually we don't really pay attention to the long-term chronic illnesses that we can develop as we start to lose these important hormones. So just a couple of seconds in the chat box, does anybody know which symptoms can be helped by diet? Jot it down in the chat box. Jenny will read it for you, because I don't think I can see the chat box. Jenny will read out any. This is not a test. You will not be marked. You will not get a black mark against your name if you get it wrong. Just anything. I think we've got a couple here. Jenny, what have we got? Oh, you're muted. I do that every time.
Hot flushes, brain fog.
Yes.
Are the two that we've got.
Okay. Well, certainly weight gain.
Oh yeah, insomnia, yeah, weight gain. That's like really awful. I've not thought of that. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so yes, all of those and more. And there's been a really interesting recent study. I don't know if most of you probably have heard of Zoe Science and Nutrition, which is personalized nutrition programs. And they've done a really big research study, which is very, very exciting, on around 70,000 perimenopausal women. And they found that diet alone could reduce the severity and the duration of perimenopause symptoms by around 30%. Now, imagine if you could go to your GP and take a pill to reduce the severity and duration of your menopause symptoms by 30%. We would all be taking this pill, right? But we can do it through eating nutrient-dense whole food diets, okay? And that is extremely exciting. So what are these essential nutrients for menopause? Now, there are quite a few, but I am just going to talk about 3 main ones because we are so short on time. And I'm going to be talking about protein, healthy fats, and fiber. So we're going to start with protein. Proteins are the building blocks of our body. They are needed for our body to function properly. They serve as structural support. They serve as biochemical catalysts. They're important for our hormones and for all the processes that go on in our body. Now, what people don't know is that as we get older, protein becomes less bioavailable to us. And what that means is that we are less able to absorb and utilize protein, which means we have to eat more of it. Okay, and we want to look at eating around 30 grams of protein per meal. And this has gone up from around 20 grams when we're younger. Okay, so that's a huge jump because we're just not absorbing it. And that looks at about 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. Now, I eat more than that because I use protein to support my training. So it does depend on how active you are and what your goals are. But at a minimum, that's what we're looking for. And you will be surprised at how little protein women in particular eat. It is alarming. I mean, my clients are often eating around 15 grams a day of protein. Okay, it's tiny, and that is just nowhere near enough. And protein has a really, really important role to play in menopause because it supports muscle mass, which declines with age. Okay, sarcopenia is a disease of old age. Okay, that is why we get frail. That is why we fall over, because we just lose that muscle mass. We need the protein to support our muscle mass. It helps protect our bones from osteoporosis. Again, when we lose that estrogen, we're much more likely to get osteoporosis. You fall, you break something, you go into hospital. It's horrible, but you need the protein to help avoid that. It's also essential for hormone production and your immune system. And some studies do show that it can help support sleep. So protein, focus on protein. The second one I want to talk about is healthy fats. As soon as you mention fat, people are terrified. Fat will make me fat. It's like saying eating a blueberry is going to make you turn into a blueberry. It just doesn't work like that. And actually, some schools of thought believe that in perimenopause and in menopause, women should go onto a keto diet. Now, I think that's extremely hard to do, so I never recommend that. But remember that a keto diet is at least 60% of your calories coming from pure fat. And you will find that people who follow a keto diet are really quite slim. So it just doesn't work like that. But fats are so important because they're the starting point for our hormones. If you're not eating enough fat, your body cannot produce estrogen and progesterone. Okay, so let that sink in for a second. What happens is we put on weight, women stop eating fat. Okay, but actually it's even more important at this time in our lives that we are eating fat so that our body can produce those hormones. It also supports cell membrane health and it aids your body absorbing certain vitamins. It can also help alleviate certain symptoms like hot flushes, depression, anxiety, and stress. Very, very important. Okay, we're going to go into fiber. And this is something that, if you know Zoe, they talk a lot about fiber. So important for supporting the microbiome, so important for weight management. And we want to be having at least 25 grams a day. And again, it's startling to see how little fiber people often eat, but 25 grams a day is really the minimum. Again, it's going to help you during menopause for feelings of fullness, digestion, and also helping to regulate blood sugar levels, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later. But easy sources of fiber, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, really easy to get more fiber into our diet, and it should be a focus as we transition through menopause. And I just wanted to add a little slide on foods that are going to support your hormones. So as Jenny talked us through the menstrual cycle, I'm just going to go into a little bit more depth in terms of what we should eat around this cycle. So days 1 to 14, they're called the follicular phase. You don't need to know that word. You don't need to memorize it, but this is when the body is preparing to release an egg for ovulation. And then we've got the luteal phase. Again, not a word you need to remember. Days 15 to 28, could be 30, depending on how long your cycle is. And this is when the uterus lining is getting ready for the egg to implant. And during your cycle, you've got 2 times when you get these huge fluctuations in hormones, these surges in hormones, one where you need estrogen and one where you need progesterone. So we can eat certain foods to support the production of these hormones. And we've got estrogen building foods and we've got progesterone building foods. So even if you don't have a cycle, it's still important because we want more of these hormones in our bodies, right? When we're going through perimenopause, the problems arise from the fact that we've not got enough of these hormones. These hormones are no longer being produced by our ovaries. Therefore, we need to give our bodies as much support as possible. Now, what you will see is that estrogen building foods are more protein and fat heavy, okay? And progesterone building foods are more carbohydrate heavy. And that shows itself, right? I don't know about you, but before I'm about to have my period, I want buttered sourdough. I want cake. I want cookies. And this is my body saying to me, we're trying to build progesterone. You need to eat to support me. Now, there are much better ways than cookies, cake, and sourdough, although sourdough is pretty good. But there are better ways to support our progesterone than turning to those kind of ultra processed crappy foods. And these are some of the foods that I would encourage you to look at. So now I want to go on to blood sugar. Now, this is a big, big problem for women as they go through perimenopause, is the act of stabilizing their blood sugar. So why does this matter? Why is it important? Because this helps you to maintain energy levels and helps to prevent the inevitable mood swings that come with our fluctuating hormones. It also supports our hormone balance and can help reduce inflammation in our body. And as we get older, we get more inflamed. Every single part of our body gets more inflamed. It also has a metabolic impact. So as our estrogen goes down, our insulin sensitivity often decreases, and this leads to weight gain. It can also lead to type 2 diabetes, which is actually really common now in perimenopausal women. So what can we do? I've just put down, there are lots of tips, but I've just put down 5 easy ones that we can look at today. Eating balanced meals. Okay, so these are meals that are covering the 3 macronutrients, and the macronutrients are your protein, your healthy fats, and your complex carbohydrates. Those are the 3 macronutrients. And you want to make sure that you are getting all of those in every single meal, but also every single snack. So in our society, we generally think of snacks as, oh, a packet of crisps or a chocolate bar. Generally, they're a little bit less healthy than our meals. And it seems to be okay. It seems to be like we're allowed to do that because it's just a snack. I'm not having a Snickers bar as my dinner, just having it as a snack. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Okay, even our snacks, although smaller, still need to be balanced, and we still need to touch upon all those macronutrients when we're having our snacks. Low GI foods, all this means is that we're looking at the complex carbohydrates rather than the simple carbohydrates, right? So you're thinking about having whole grain bread rather than your white bread, okay? Trying to reduce that insulin spike from eating those foods. You want to eat consistently. So your body has got a steady supply of energy. Now, the number of clients that I work with that have breakfast and then they go for 8 hours and then they have a massive dinner later on is amazing. That seems to be quite a common thing that's happening. But it's not a great plan for us as we're getting older. You know what? You can do most things in your 20s and you bounce back. It just doesn't work like that as we get older, sadly. So we really want to make sure that we're eating every 3 to 4 hours. Our body knows that food is coming. We're not having to store what we eat as fat because we're worried about not having enough food. And it's going to help us to maintain our energy levels too. Now, staying hydrated. We're all pretty dehydrated, but actually staying hydrated is really important for managing our blood sugar levels because water actually helps to flush out any excess blood sugar that we have. And physical activity, a passion of mine, it helps to improve insulin sensitivity so your body uses glucose more effectively. Okay. Fasting, caffeine, sugar, and alcohol. These are all really interesting topics, and I could go into many hours of content on each one of these. But I wanted to bring this up today because there has been quite a lot of new research into these. And I've had to change the way that I eat, when I eat, how I eat because of this new research. So fasting, I've been fasting sort of 16 to 8 since 2019. Okay, so I've done it for 6 years. But new research out is showing that all the fasting research was done on men, not on women. And we aren't men. We're very, very different from men. And actually, the rules that apply to men don't apply to women around most things, and certainly not fasting. And the new school of thought is that fasting over 14 hours creates such stress within the female body that it becomes very, very problematic for our hormones. And one of the reasons that it does this is because our adrenal glands are a part of the body which, as we all probably know, produce the stress hormones like cortisol, but they also produce small amounts of estrogen and progesterone. And when our reproductive organs stop producing the estrogen and progesterone, which happens in perimenopause, we really rely on our adrenal glands to do that, to get a little bit extra from our adrenal glands. But when we are stressed, our adrenal glands prioritize producing cortisol. Basically, they completely stop producing the sex hormones. So the more stressed we are, the less our body is producing estrogen and progesterone. And that is really problematic in perimenopause. So as well as contributing to even more muscle loss, which happens anyway, and nutrient deficiencies, which often happens as well, we don't really want to be fasting for more than 14 hours, but we do want to be fasting for at least 12. Caffeine on an empty stomach, as part of my fasting protocol, I always had a matcha tea during my fast. I thought that was very good. No, apparently not. Not good. Not good at all. Sigh. According to Dr. Stacey Sims, and she is one of the leading researchers on all of this stuff in women, caffeine without food causes a massive cortisol spike, leading to increased anxiety and disrupting blood sugar, can also irritate the stomach lining. So we don't want to be having caffeine on an empty stomach. We also, an extra caveat, we don't want to be having it too close to meal times because it can impact the way that your body absorbs nutrients. So I recommend having caffeine around 30 minutes after eating food. Sugar and alcohol, you probably know this. Sugar's not great. Alcohol's not great, particularly when we're going through perimenopause. High sugar leads to weight gain and it leads to inflammation. Now, I'm not talking about natural sugars like fruit and dairy, but I am talking about the foods that have added sugar. And we need to look at the back of packets because even if something says it's healthy on the outside, its marketing campaign is low sugar, you still need to check the back because the amount of added sugar is alarming. And if we are eating sugars, we want to think about wrapping that sugar in protein and healthy fat. And then alcohol, it's a poison, okay? So it's not ideal, but we love alcohol. And if you want to have it, but have it in moderation. It really disrupts sleep. And anybody who's got an Oura ring, which monitors your sleep, will see what happens to deep sleep when you have alcohol. It basically erases deep sleep. People always think alcohol helps with sleep because you fall asleep immediately, but you're sleeping at a very, very shallow level, and you're much more likely to wake up multiple times through the night, get heart palpitations, etc., etc. It can also worsen hot flashes. So limit your alcohol. I'm going to go quickly into stress now. As I've mentioned before, stress isn't great. I mean, it's never great, but it's really not great in perimenopause because it does stop our bodies from producing those vital sex hormones. But it's a natural response. It's a response to any kind of challenging situations, and it's not necessarily inherently negative. And it's generally experienced when the demands of a situation exceed our ability to cope with it. But it's natural, and it can actually be positive or negative. So good stress is stress that's under your control. It's stress that feels manageable. So, for example, Jenny and I might have felt a little bit of stress before doing this masterclass. That's completely normal. That's helping us to stay focused. It's helping us to stay on point. But it's not chronic stress. It's not stress that is just within our systems constantly day in and day out. It's stress that's going to occur for sort of 20 minutes before we do something stressful, and then it's going to dissipate afterwards. I know afterwards I'm looking forward to a delicious lunch, cup of tea, sit down before the children arrive home. My stress is going to go right down afterwards. And we don't want to see stress as bad or negative necessarily. You've also got good types of stress, like hormetic stress. And you will know this from things like cold water therapy or going into the sauna. It's kind of stressful, but it's under your control. And I don't have time to talk about hormetic stress. And I don't have time to talk about cold water therapy, which again, women don't want to be doing. It's all very different. Cold water showers. It's a no, ladies. It's a no. I know, Susie. I'm so sorry. All these things I used to teach, it's a no now. We can talk more. And then we've got the bad stress. This is the type of stress that feels overwhelming. It feels like it's out of your control. It feels like it's unmanageable. And oftentimes this stress is forced upon you by somebody else. And it really is not something that you can manage. And this type of stress has profound effects on your physical and emotional well-being. It's chronic stress. It's that persistent low level or high level of stress, and it affects nearly every system in the body. Research is showing us that it leads to everything from reduced production of sex hormones to high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, impacted immune system, gastrointestinal issues, asthma, mood disorders, and memory problems. What a lovely list. And what's more, the effects are even worse on women. Yay. Because we produce more cortisol in response to stress than men do. And these prolonged exposures to cortisol lead to feelings of anxiety and emotional distress. We have a larger hippocampus than men, and we have greater connectivity between the two sides of the brain, and it makes us more attuned to emotional stressors than men are. We're more likely to ruminate, and what this means is think on and on. Oh God, I should have said that. Can't believe that person did this to me. Particularly when we're trying to get to sleep at night, or we've woken up at 3 a.m, we're trying to get back to sleep. We're ruminating. It's creating more and more stress in our body. This exacerbates negative feelings and makes it really hard for us to move past these stressful events. And we also, like it or not, we have an increased exposure to stressors. And this can lead to that chronic stress and pressure to meet expectations in all areas of our lives. So, what can we do to holistically manage stress? There are lots of things. This is positive. Nutrition is one. Exercise is another. Sleep. Community and self-care. Now, I'm only going to talk about 3 of these today, but community is really important, and actually looking after yourself is also incredibly important to just calm ourselves down. But I'm just going to look at the top 3 today. Exercise, passion of mine. It helps to regulate cortisol, importantly. It improves our mood and it increases our overall well-being. Regular physical activity improves our body's ability to cope with stress. It makes us more resilient. Now, moderate to vigorous physical activity is associated with lower levels of perceived stress and greater levels of stress resilience. So what does this mean? The research is all very, disparate in terms of what is recommended. In general, what it is saying is that you want to do around 30 minutes. You want to do about 5 days a week of 30 minutes. You basically want to get your heart rate up so that you have trouble speaking fluently. Now, we also have to bear in mind at this stage of our life that doing a high intensity workout every single day is not going to be good for us. Because if we're thinking about cortisol, if we're thinking about stress within the body, that does create stress. But doing that once a week, twice a week is absolutely fine. weight training is more important at this time of our lives than it is at any other time. And that is because we are desperately wanting to build muscle. And unfortunately, it's harder than ever to build muscle at this time in our lives because of our testosterone and because of our sex hormones. So we need to put more effort into building muscle than probably doing high intensity interval training. So if you were doing lots of that, I would highly recommend you reducing high intensity interval training and really focusing more on your weight training, your resistance training. If you don't have any weights, you can still do lots of things using your body weight. Press ups, pull ups, tricep dips, all of those sorts of things are going to be excellent. But exercise really does need to be a focus as we get older so that we can maintain our flexibility, we can maintain our independence, we can maintain our ability to do all the things that we want to continue doing. Because old age generally robs us of our independence and of our ability to do these things. And so we need to lay the foundations now for a strong and healthy old age. Okay, so really, really important. If you don't do any exercise, highly encourage you starting now, and start in small ways. Don't start with 30 minutes. If that seems insurmountable, start with 5 minutes. Start small and build up from there. Sleep. Now, I don't know about you, but this is something that I've had trouble with probably for quite a long time. So I'm kind of nervous about what's going to be happening in the next 5 to 10 years. But sleep, poor quality of sleep leads to increased stress levels. Obviously, it does. It's a form of torture. Okay, being woken up through the night by young children is awful, but waking up when it doesn't seem like there's any reason that you have woken up is even worse. And sleep can be impacted by the fact we might need to pee more often. And I think I spoke about this with Jenny before, some tips that I give my clients who, with lowering levels of estrogen, impacts our bladders and all of our vaginal health, and it can mean that we need to pee more and certainly pee at night, but not drinking past a certain time of the day. You will need to experiment with what this time of the day is, but for example, not drinking past 4 o'clock can really help stop you needing to get up in the night to go for a pee. That doesn't mean you're going to be dehydrated. What it means is that you're going to drink more earlier on in the day. And that's something that you will need to plan for. You will need to make sure that you are consuming enough liquids. And then if you are very thirsty at night, what I tend to do is just put some water in my mouth and then just roll it around and then spit it out, or just drink a tiny little bit. And that is going to help you stop you from getting up to do pees in the middle of the night, because that is really destructive to sleep. Having good sleep hygiene enhances your stress resilience. Now, sleep hygiene is something that people don't necessarily think about, especially in their sort of 20s and 30s and early 40s, because sleep's probably not really an issue. But when sleep does start becoming an issue, having a sleep hygiene regime in place is really important. And sleep hygiene sounds like a scary term. It's just having a sleep routine. Like, we do it all for our children. They do these certain things, and in our brains, it's making us realize that it's time to wind down and go to bed. But what we tend to do is go to bed. Oh my God, I've got to do this. I have this massive amount of on my to-do list still to do. I'm maybe watching something really exciting on the TV, turn off the TV and expect myself to go to sleep. No, because we're not robots. We don't have a button we can press which turns everything off and makes us go to sleep. We have to have a wind down routine, which is signaling to our body that it is time to start winding down and getting ready for sleep. Now, some key points are blue lights, because what this does, and blue lights come from your devices, your phone, tablets, TVs particularly, and the blue light which they emit replicates the light of the sun rising in the morning, right? That is a blue light. Those are the rays that we are getting. So what do you think is happening to our brains when it's 10:30 and we're watching TV and we're on our phone and we've got our iPad there? It's telling our brain that it is morning. Why would we suddenly be going to sleep in the morning? So what we can do, because most of us don't want to turn our devices off an hour and a half before we go to bed, I certainly don't, and I certainly can't, is wear blue blocking glasses. Okay, you look like a bit of a dick, but it's fine. Okay. You've just got glasses on with an orange frame. Joe's got some particularly sexy ones. My husband, he clips them on to the front of his reading, his glasses to watch the TV. You're not going out, right? You're in bed or you're at home. It doesn't matter. You can buy them from Amazon really cheaply. I've got them for my kids even, because if they're watching screens or they're doing something, it disrupts their sleep as well, because they are also not robots. So blue blocking glasses, a really easy, quick, cheap hack. Do this around an hour and a half before you go to bed. No caffeine after midday. Again, that is going to disrupt your sleep. It has a very long half-life and it's living in your system. Dark, quiet room. If you've got light coming in, if you've got things flashing, it is going to disrupt your sleep. Put sticky tape over them. I throw cushions over mine so that the red is no longer there. Whatever you do, make sure that you've got a quiet and dark room. Ideally, you're not eating anything within the 3-hour window before bedtime, because that means your digestion's going to be going. Having a bedtime routine. So you're knowing that you wash your face, you clean your face, you put on moisturizer, you brush your teeth, you get into bed, you put on your hand cream. All of these things are signaling to your body that it's time to go to sleep. So try doing them in the same order at the same time. These are really, really strong, powerful signals to your brain that this is the only time you do this. These 6 things or whatever it is. These are the only time you do them. And hang on, every time you do them straight afterwards, you go to sleep. It's a routine, okay? It's stimulating to your brain that it is time to go to sleep. Having a consistent bedtime and wake up time. We know this, work with our circadian rhythms. And if you're exercising, which hopefully you are, doing it in the morning or early afternoon, not too close to bedtime, because it's stressful on your body. And another one I haven't put down here, but actually your bedtime routine starts in the morning. It starts by looking outside without sunglasses on, seeing that blue light. It then goes on at midday. There's a different light at midday, and there's a different light as the sun goes down, that warm sun goes down. These are all ways to signal to your body when it is time for sleep and when it is time to be awake. That's it from me. Oh, I've done quite well. Oh, pat myself on the back. So we've got a little bit of time. Got a little time for Q&A, and then I know Jenny is going to talk to you about something extraordinarily exciting, which I want to find out more about. She briefly mentioned it. I was hoping there might be some kind of slideshow, video, photos, because I've seen a little bit about it, and it's kind of needs to be seen to be believed. From what I know about it. But if there are any questions, do feel free to ask a question. There are also my details. If you have questions that maybe you don't want to ask on a public forum, you can feel free to send me an email or a text if you want to ask any of those questions that you might have. So I will.
Yeah, there are a couple that have come through in the chat. So if you're okay for me to.
Want to read them out to me?
Yeah. So the first one is I have megalomanium brain tumor, which itself causes problems, but coupled with perimenopause and not being able to take any hormone related products, I'm taking like HRT, is a daily challenge. Apparently these brain tumors are very common in hormonal women. Wow. There's a lot of different diseases that actually are, I think like 80% of autoimmune diseases are women. And you were saying before, kind of the tests are done on men, which is not the same, because there isn't the same hormones as well. So
I think that's a really good point, actually, that actually at perimenopause, women suddenly start to get a whole heap of things which they probably never experienced before in their lives. And that could be anything like type 2 diabetes to really high levels of cholesterol to autoimmune diseases like mast cell activation syndrome, which is totally debilitating. It's a histamine intolerance, and it just takes over your whole body, and it can be really, really nasty. So there are a lot of things to watch out for, and that is why it's even more important to be extremely healthy and in touch with your body and what's going on with your body, so that you are aware of the changes that are happening.
I mean, I was smiling to myself when you said the food, because the more I started to, I told you about like how it kind of hit me, my body suddenly hit me with a truck. It was just like, haha, you've been coasting, girl. Like, it's time to like listen up. But I'm going to tell you some signals so that you've got like a better long-term health. That's how I see it now. You know, I'm telling you
Yeah.
things for longevity, not just to annoy you. But I was smiling when you had the food, because I think about yeah, when I'm, you know, when I've got that progesterone kind of heart, you know, starting to come in, I'm all like sweet potato is just like I can't, just like I could really, so I have that as a signal. What is it that I really want to eat today? What is it that I would really like to do today if I could do anything? And that's going to tell me a little bit about probably the hormones that are rushing through. So yeah, like listening to the body rather than all the other things that you've talked about, like let's instead just keep on watching TV. Let's keep on like stuffing ourselves with like cake and all the rest of it. So the next question, Bex, is the caffeine on it? By the way, just so you know, you're still sharing your screen, Bex. Just if you
Right.
did.
I didn't know that. How do I stop doing that? Oh, have I stopped?
No, it might be at the no, not yet.
Can you stop me sharing it, or do I have to do
Just
it?
gonna say, I don't think I can, unfortunately.
Oh, hang on, stop share. I can do it. There we
Uh,
go.
Lovely. See, the next one is caffeine on an empty stomach. Is this just for women, or is this for anyone, any gender, any like life stage, or yeah, like not just perimenopausal women, is it?
It's going to spike cortisol in anybody, right? Because it's a stimulant, but it's more important that we don't, right? If you're in your 20s, you really can get away with doing absolutely anything, right? It's not going to have much of a detrimental effect. Same for men. It's going to stress them, but it's not as important as it is for perimenopausal women.
Yeah. And you know, it's so interesting you saying in terms of yeah, that cortisol, because anybody that's had, you know, who's had a baby, you hear cortisol, cortisol, you can't have your baby have cortisol in their brain. It like, you know, it's so bad for brain development. And yet we're not told all of this as women about how much it's affecting our brains. And then of course all the problems that then come with that by not taking that on board. Sarah says she can't wait to, she has to jump off, but she can't wait for the recording. Thank you ever so much. So having a wind down routine has changed sleep and so much of the quality of it. So yeah, amazing. Next question is, what about I'm not quite sure how to say this.
Phytoestrogen.
Thank you. Supplements. How
Phytoestrogen.
helpful are these?
So, you know what? There's so little research done into supplements. There's so little research really knowing about how bioavailable, so how readily the body can utilize supplements. That, to be honest, I don't know. I tend to think of supplements as like an insurance policy. I tend to think of it as like, if I can afford it, and I'm not gonna stop eating something because I'm taking a supplement, right? So for example, magnesium, really, really important that we all supplement with magnesium because it's so difficult to get it from our food. So magnesium is one that actually does have some research behind it that it does work. But it also doesn't mean that I'm going to stop eating leafy green veg. You know, I that is the way that my body is naturally going to get that. I know it's more bioavailable than taking a little tiny white tablet. That, remember, that could be what could be in that tablet could be destroyed by our stomach acid, right? And that's one of the
Right.
problems with probiotics and stuff. They don't really know if it's actually getting out of the stomach because of stomach acid breaking it down. So with what I would say, Kimmy, about phytoestrogens is that we do know that women in Asia don't experience as severe duration and intensity of menopause symptoms. Okay, we do know that. And we also know that they have a much higher level of phytoestrogens in their body because of what they're eating, much more soy, much more of those types of foods. It is likely that they are experiencing less severe and less long perimenopause symptoms because of their diet.
Wow.
Therefore, you put two and two together, hopefully we're making four by thinking that that is because of phytoestrogens. It's also going to have a lot to do with cultural narratives around the menopause, you know, and we can't downplay that. This is, you know, not necessarily causality, but it does seem to be the case. So, Kimmy, I would say that if you feel like they are working for you, then absolutely keep going with them.
Mm.
Because all the worst that's happening is that you've got some expensive we, right? That's the worst that's happening, right? But I would also take that knowledge and make sure that you're eating more edamame and you're eating more tempeh and you're eating more tofu and more of those types of foods as well. Miso, start having a miso soup, those sorts of things.
Okay.
Start having it in your diet so that you know that actually that is going to be bioavailable as opposed to a supplement.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And it's so interesting you're saying in terms of, yeah, kind of the different foods and the different cultures and also the different perspectives. So we call it perimenopause. Pause on, it's a pause now. You're kind of a
Yeah.
pause on something that's happening in the womb. And yet, I'm trying to remember if it's Japanese or I can't remember quite which language it is. But menopause isn't that at all. Menopause is
An
defined as
awakening.
a new awakening. Can you imagine if we just said
Yeah.
like, "Welcome to the new awakening webinar"?
Yeah, absolutely. Much more thin, right? The word menopause has such negative connotations in our society, and therefore we're terrified of it, and therefore we experience it negatively, right?
Yeah,
But if actually it was suddenly you're the leader of the tribe now, now you're the wise person, everyone defers to you, everyone goes to you, would actually we experience these things? I mean, let's not downplay the severity of menopause symptoms because they can be absolutely awful and debilitating. But I just wonder if actually it was celebrated and it was seen as something amazing that happens to a woman, actually whether, we would experience this transition in a slightly different way. Sadly,
yeah,
we don't know. That's not going to happen in our lifetimes, I don't think. But, well, maybe for our children.
yeah. So interesting. So then, last question: Can you point me in the direction? Info about cold water therapy. Yeah, I'm interested in this too, and why it's bad for perimenopause menopause.
So gone. Although, you know what? It's kind of bittersweet for me because I'm like, did I ever really enjoy the
You never
freezing
liked it
cold
anyway.
rating for about 2 seconds and then just painful? So essentially, yes, it's Dr. Stacey Sims. She is kind of like the leading researcher on kind of all this sort of stuff for women and women athletes. And Susie, I can send you some really interesting things that she has done. But essentially, it's different for men and women. It's good for men, it's not good for women. So fun. Women shouldn't really go below, I think she said 14 water that's 14 degrees. So it's not balmy, it's not, oh, we can only have hot baths. But it's definitely we shouldn't be running into the sea after a sauna. We shouldn't be having a hot shower and then a freezing cold shower. Those things are just too stressful on the body. It produces too much cortisol when we don't want more cortisol than we absolutely have to have. But I was having a conversation with one of my clients about this the other day, and she goes cold water swimming every morning, and she absolutely loves it. And she said to me, "So are you saying to me that I have to stop this?" And I said, "Absolutely not. But what I do want to do is make sure that you are educated
Mm,
about the decisions that you're making so that you are consciously choosing to
mm,
do this, right?
mm,
I know that sugar is not good for me. That doesn't mean I'm stopping eating sugar. It is a pleasure for me. I love eating sugar. This is not something that I'm going to stop doing, but I'm doing it with the knowledge that it is not good for me, right? And
mm,
I'm choosing to do it probably less than I used to do it. And I'm choosing to do it in a certain way. I eat after a meal, so it's going to reduce my insulin spike. I'm going to wrap it with something. So I'm going to have some nuts or some seeds or something before I have that sugar. Or I'm going to make things that include healthy fats and fiber and things which are going to mitigate that insulin response. So I'm doing something which I know is bad for me, but I know it's bad for me. It's not like someone over there is saying it's really good for you to eat sugar and I'm eating it going, "Oh, I'm doing a really good thing for me," right? And that's really important. I think as soon as this new information comes out, we must share it.
yeah,
Because if people are doing like, I'm not doing cold water showers anymore because I didn't really enjoy it in the first place. If
yeah,
I loved it, maybe I'd be like, you know what, I love it. I'm maybe going to do it once a week or once every 2 weeks rather than I'm going to do it once a day because it's good for me. I hate it, but it's good for me.
mm,
And I think it's just really, really important that we have that information and we choose to use that information in whatever way is best for us.
yeah. Love that. I love that. And then if you could give one top tip to make perimenopause and the menopause a better journey for women, what would be your top tip?
It's a really annoyingly good question, Adriana. So funny. Um, top tip is, I think it's going to be something really naff, like just look after yourself and love yourself. Because if you are loving yourself, you are going to be treating yourself well. You are going to be eating foods that nourish you and make you feel good, right? You're not going to be sabotaging yourself. You're not going to be, you know, watching Netflix till 2 in the morning because you know that you want to take care of yourself, that you want to look after yourself. And therefore you're going to be making better decisions and better choices
Mm,
because you want to look after yourself. It's like, how we treat our children.
mm,
So often when I work with new mums, they're like, oh, and the children get the organic blueberries, but I don't want to have any myself. I will have, a
mhm.
chocolate bar.
Toast. Yeah.
Exactly. I have burnt toast and I give the beautiful toast with, organic butter and all of this stuff to my children. No, now is the time to really take care of yourself, because if you want to be there in a healthy and happy way for your children, you have to take care of yourself now, because you
Mm,
don't want to be the 80-year-old sitting in the old people's home who can't move and has dementia because you didn't do anything about your life choices right now. And this is the time to take action. This is the time to do something proactive to make sure that that isn't you. Because
yes.
whatever your circumstance now, however bad your diet, however little you move your body, however, lack of sleep you get, there's always time to make the change. Even people in their 60s make the change and it makes the next 20, 30 years better. It's never too late to make the change. That doesn't mean you shouldn't make it now, but what I'm
Oh,
saying is that it's never.
and I love that. That's what I think now, that these symptoms are a gift. They're a gift to say, what should I be now thinking about and looking after myself with? And I remember
Yes.
a few months ago, I went for a massage and the lady said to me, she was like, you drink alcohol, don't you? I was like, can I lie? Because she really knows something from massage. And as I lay there, she's like, do you eat sugary food? And I was like, do I lie? Or she's clear. But the reason that I'm saying this is that I sat there going, I don't want I've got another 40 years. Like, this isn't the end. I started to thinking like, oh God, I wish I wasn't lying here with this woman telling me like all the bad choices that I've made in my life. And then I thought, why she was telling me this was because she cared. She was just like, I want to give you some tips so that you can help yourself, so that you're not having to come back here and I'm having to like do this lymphatic drainage thing on you, because your legs are like massive. So I was like, yeah, no, well, that is why I'm here. But I was like, I've got another 40 years. I don't want to be
Yeah.
sitting here thinking about that day. I did nothing with that information that day. And
Yes.
yeah, so I love that. I love that.
I love that.
Joy.
I always
Oh,
talk
go
about,
on, sorry.
sorry, I always talk about it as reclaiming your health,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because not always, but often the people who experience the worst symptoms actually are leading the least healthy lifestyle. Not always, but often that can be the case. The CEO who's extremely stressed, has no time to eat anything but kind of takeaways. And these are the people that can experience the worst because their body is so stressed, their adrenals are burnt out, they're living off caffeine and alcohol, and they are experiencing, they are burnout. That is burnout, right? They need to be signed off work for 6 months
Mm,
because they need to reclaim their health. They need to start reprioritizing themselves and their own health. And it
yeah.
is unity to do that.
Oh, I just like, oh God, I'm so excited about this. Is coconut oil or milk products, are they considered healthy fats?
Yes, absolutely. Coconut is excellent. I know it's called a saturated fat, but it is still an excellent fat because all saturated fats aren't the same. You're not going to compare coconut fat with, hydrogenated fat that your McDonald's chips are cooked in, right? They're both saturated fat, but this is a very, very good, healthy fat.
Awesome. So this is like, yeah, I kind of like you said, in terms of, this has just been amazing. I've already taken like so many more notes. Like, I'm gonna 3 hours before bedtime, and like, yeah, I'm gonna look at like, yeah, my community. And But let me tell you a little, yeah. So, like Becky said, if it's okay with you, could I take like 5 minutes just to tell you about something that I've developed that you might want to go deeper with some of this stuff, because I have felt all these things, like, and I'm even taking more notes about this, and like I told you about kind of what happened. And I was very lucky. The last 2 summers I got to spend in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, and in South Africa. And something this time happened, which was really interesting. So this time I was there for 2.5 months, and when I was there, and I'm not saying that this would happen for everyone, but when I was there, I suddenly didn't need to start taking the supplements that I had for perimenopause, and I'll tell you why. Where I was, I didn't have light pollution. By 9 o'clock, I was exhausted, like exhausted. I had 3 hours of kind of like not very much light. There was no light pollution. My mother-in-law doesn't believe in the TV. She thinks the TV takes away your creativity and you're paying someone else for creativity rather than being in community with others. Funnily enough, Bex, that's what she thinks. So I was like so tired. Suddenly I was sleeping better because, like you say, that was like the darkness was there. There was no mass-produced food. There was no there was no saturated fats. There was no high processed food. Everything, even down to peanut butter, was being processed by hand to get the peanuts, to get the, to be able to get the peanut butter. There was no bread, etc., etc. So I was in this detox without even realizing that was happening, because I didn't miss it, because it just wasn't available. Didn't feel any different. Suddenly started feeling, though, really great. No light, so there's no light pollution. There's no noise. There was barely any, cars like rushing past and all the rest of it. And I suddenly started to get such clarity of thought, And I suddenly said to my husband, there are secrets of the earth that we need more women to uncover, because this circadian rhythm has always been there, but we've manufactured a whole layer on top of it. We've manufactured the 9 to 5. We've manufactured the 7-day a week. We've manufactured like a 12-month calendar. We've manufactured all of this stuff. And yet here I am, back where it started, and I've got clarity of thought. I'm sleeping better. I'm like feeling better, and all of this stuff. So it's like, I want to make something that I can bring to more women. So for anyone that is going like, wow, I love this stuff, I want to be able to go to this stuff, but now I'm going to pop off, I'm going to open up my fridge, and there, sitting there, is like toast with beans on toast. That's what's like, that's actually what's in my cupboard. Because some of the times, like, it is the expectations as well. Like you had there, the stress of expectations and the different roles that we have to play. And it's great that we have more freedom as women, and yet it comes with more now expectations in terms of our time and where we're able to go. We're having children later. They're then at the point that they're hormonal, while we're hormonal. Let me share a little bit, if it's okay. Anyone that does want to go any further with this, hopefully you can see that. Unlocking the secrets of the earth. For anyone that is like, this sounds interesting, this April I'm taking a very small number, there's only actually 5 places left, so 9 women, Victoria Falls in Zambia. And the Victoria Falls is one of the 7 wonders of the world. And as I stood there with one of this waterfall is twice as big as Niagara, I felt the immense power of nature, and I suddenly thought, why do I not feel so powerful? Like I'm a force to be reckoned with, as like a woman of nature as well. So this is all around unlocking these secrets, right by the falls. I've hired out a lodge that's only for us, so there isn't any noise. It's away from the expectations. It's away from everybody else. And it's all about rewriting this next chapter with power and purpose. Like you said, this is the new awakening. What if we were to look at menopause in a different way? That actually, this is like the curtains are now going to open, and I'm going to go into this next chapter feeling empowered, feeling alive, rewriting some of those narratives, also through the power of nature, wisdom of women, and the calming energy of being in this place where all you'll have around you is the circadian rhythm of the animals coming past. So this lodge is right on top of the Zambezi River. So I'm hoping while we go through some of the workshops, we might see some hippos, and some amazing wildlife along the way, going on river safaris, going on, going into the savannah, maybe seeing a lion or two as well. So it's all around some of the things of really understanding what's going on in our brain, what's going on in our body, through these hormonal shifts, and helping in terms of, well, what are some of my beliefs around this, and what if I was to change some of those, what might be the shift for my next chapter. So we're just going to go through. So like I say, we're going to go through these things. We're going to also get to go and meet this amazing chef who's created a whole kitchen on the Zambezi River, who talks about sufficiency rather than abundance, and what if we were to think about that we had enough and that we were enough, what might that bring out for us. Like I say, we're going to be surrounded by nature. And then at the last night, we go to this very prestigious hotel that has literally got, you open up your curtains and there's zebras and giraffes that just pass by your window, because I thought, if we're going to do something powerful, let's make it something that we're never going to forget as well. Going to a local village, going and seeing how the food is collected and made right there. So nothing is mass farm produce. You get to really kind of recharge your mind and recharge your body as well. And there's something about safari that takes you right into the heart of nature, where it's like it was before anything came along and high-rise buildings and all this stuff that we made up. And you get to feel that energy and what that might bring within you as well. And then we get to explore African dancing and African storytelling, as well as we kind of release and go through. So like you can see, I'm going to, if anybody is like, oh, this sounds interesting, I want to hear more about the bio goodness and what I could do with that. I want to understand a little bit more about like how I could step into that power. I want to, yes, this sounds like something that I would love to do. I'm just going to pop my email and the website just in the chat, because I don't want to take away if there are any other questions, and it might not be for everybody. But then if it is something you're like, I would like to explore a little bit more of that, I can pop the details here and you can take a look. For anybody that is interested, like I say, I have 5 places left, and anyone that books by the end of February, you also get a bonus sunrise safari thrown in as well, where we get to go and go see the elephants. Well, we don't know what we're going to see because it's a national park, it's not a zoo, clearly, but that's also thrown in as well. So I wanted to share a little bit about that before we left for today, for anybody who was interested in it. And this has been like so great. I mean, it's so great. I just thank you, Bex. I've learned, as always, so much from you, and thank you all for joining us today. It's been an exceptional lunchtime. A lunchtime with lots of energy and lots of insights. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And yes, Jenny, looking forward to looking into more about that amazing retreat, which looks life-changing. So yeah, do check that out.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Amazing as always. Thank you.
Thank you.